Hello, and welcome to Murder 1800 Plus. To help grow my channel, please subscribe, if you haven't already, and if you enjoy this story, please give a like, and maybe a comment too. For more content like this, please find my channel link in the description below. Thank you.
Peter Miller, died December 9, 1984. This murder remains unsolved and there has been a singular absence of progress in the police investigation over the last 39 years, despite thousands of lines of inquiry. During that time, 170 case exhibits have been either lost, possibly destroyed, or returned to their owners, mostly in 1991. There have been arrests, but no one has ever been charged. 24-year-old unemployed Peter Miller was lodging with his brother and sister-in-law at their home, 10 Camden Place, Great Yarmouth, England. He had spent some of his Sunday afternoon helping a female neighbor with some household repairs. When his brother returned to the house at 7:45 p.m. it was in darkness. He discovered his brother's body lying, face down, in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. Although Tony found no sign of life, he still believed that Peter may still be alive, so when he noticed something unpleasant in the air, which burned his eyes and caused him to cough, he thought it was mains gas, so attempted to pull his brother's body out of the room. This action was likely what prompted police to initially identify Tony as a suspect. This was quickly dismissed. Peter was killed by a single stab wound to the chest, nearly 7 inches deep. The only sign of a struggle was a broken letter rack on the inside of the front door. There was a blood trail that led from there to the kitchen. The doctor who did the post-mortem concluded that Peter had remained conscious for 15 to 60 minutes following the attack, which had occurred sometime between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. There was some curious evidence left at the scene, some hairs, which were thought to have come from a wig, and a canister of CS gas, which was found lying by the door. This was the source of the smell reported by Tony. It could not be determined whether the canister belonged to Peter or was brought by his attacker. The weapon used was not found, however. A sharp implement was recovered in 2013, though this has not been formally recognized as the murder weapon. There was one witness who claimed to have directed an unknown man to the house shortly before the discovery of Peter's body. This suspect had also been reported as being seen in Peter's company on at least 4 occasions in the days leading up to the murder. The police had a detailed description, though no one was ever formally identified. Strangely, the police declined to release an image of this man in 1984, nor since, on the pretext that they might get the wrong person. They also refused to cooperate with the BBC TV show Crime Watch or the independent charity Crime Stoppers. It does seem likely that the killer was, at least, familiar to Peter, and it is hard to comprehend why the Norfolk police are reticent to release this image, as it does seem like a worthwhile lead to pursue. Also, 3 weeks after the crime, a woman contacted the police in connection with the case. Unfortunately, nothing useful came from this and the woman has never been traced. Tony had last seen his brother alive around noon on the fateful day, when he and his wife left to visit relatives. Peter was watching football on TV at this time. He was, apparently, in a mood. In fact, he had been somewhat withdrawn since July that year. His sister thought that he may have feared for his life, but he had been seen all over town, so did not exactly seem to be lying low. If we assume the CS gas was brought by the perpetrator, then that would seem to indicate premeditation. On the other hand, maybe Peter had been expecting trouble, so had the canister to hand. Either way, it would seem that either Peter was acquainted with the killer or had upset someone who sent the unknown man to deal with him. They were likely resident in Great Yarmouth. They would have been blood-stained when leaving the scene, yet no one saw them. It was a very cold-blooded assault, but murder was not necessarily intended. Usually, a hitman would ensure the victim was dead, especially if they had seen their face, so it seems more likely that the killer had a personal connection. A single stab wound could even be defensive. Of course, wearing a wig would also seem to indicate premeditation and intent. Another curious detail was that Peter was found wearing tracksuit bottoms, one shoe, and no top. The jumper he had been wearing earlier was on the floor beside his body. I suppose this could have been the result of a struggle, but it doesn't completely make sense. However, without full details of the crime scene, it is impossible to draw any inferences from this. While Peter had been in trouble with the police, so, presumably, had some criminal associations, they were mystified as to why anyone would want to harm him. The police have followed numerous leads over the years, regularly reviewing the case. Anthony offered his house, worth about £12,000 in 1984, about £43,000 in today's money, as a reward to identify the killer, as he, understandably, no longer wished to live in it. In 2019, Norfolk Police initiated a new appeal for information. Nothing appears to have come of that either. There does seem to have been some ineptitude in the police's handling of the case. Evidence has clearly been lost, not least of all, the CS gas canister. So, while there is an apparent, general determination to solve the case, it does seem as though there may have been some conflict of interest percolating in the background. The case could still be solved, however, if the perpetrator, or someone who knows the perpetrator, were to come forward. Justice could still be served. Until then, Peter Miller's mysterious death will remain unresolved, while Peter's family will continue to grieve their lack of closure. Although there isn't enough information in the public domain to draw any meaningful opinions, I can still speculate. It could be that his death had nothing to do with criminality, nor the mystery man he had been seen with and may have visited the house on that day. The supposed wig hairs could just be a red herring. It is important to note that formal statements were not obtained from neighbors in the 1980s, which seems like a major failing. The man seen with Peter may have been a known criminal, he may have been protected, and the public too afraid to name him, but not necessarily the killer. Although there were no signs of a break-in, this doesn't mean the killer didn't force their way in, hence the damage to the rack on the door. What is known is that Peter had been helping a female neighbor that afternoon. He was found without his top on and only wearing one shoe. Could the killer be a jealous partner of the female neighbor? Perhaps they had been having an affair for some time and Peter was worried that the jealous partner would find out, which was what was making him tense. Perhaps that's what happened. A spur-of-the-moment response, of extreme jealousy-driven rage, upon catching them in the act. There is no support for this, but it's not impossible. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, it is very much appreciated.